When the new year rings in and the ball drops down, get ready for the IRS to drop the hammer on Tea Partiers. In round two, well, it could be worse than round one. Welcome, everyone. I'm Charles Payne in for Neil Cavuto. And the IRS reportedly already has a plan to slam Tea Partiers next year. House Republicans saying it's changing the rules to classify all activities of these groups as, quote, political. That would make it nearly impossible for them to get tax-exempt status. My next guest says, once again, the administration is slamming political opponents. Conservative columnist Gina Loudon and Republican Texas congressional candidate Katrina Pierson here now. By the way, we invited Katrina's opponent, Congressman Pete Sessions, in on the show. Katrina, let's start with you. You guys see this coming, and you know it's coming. What are you doing about it?
Well, you know, that's why many of us out there have stepped up and actually run to fill some of these positions where we have entrenched incumbent politicians who are just afraid to do what is right, and that is to simply protect the American people from its government. Katrina,
why are they afraid? In other words, and by the way, is it not just Democrats who don't want to step up for the cause, but also your GOPers? And if so, why are they all so afraid?
Oh, absolutely, Charles. You know, the thing is, we have this thing called the Constitution, and we have the administration numbers dropping, congressional numbers are in the teens and even in the single digits. And no one wants to do anything. No one's been arrested. No one's gone to jail. We can't even get people subpoenaed. There is no accountability in Washington, D.C. Why are they afraid? That's a very good question. So we're going to have to, as the American people, elect people who are not afraid to govern according to principle and not let other people dictate our policies based in fear.
Well, you know, Gina, here's the problem. It's going to be hard to even get that message across if the IRS does go on the attack, and this is worse than last time. It's out in the open, out in front. Then how do you get around this? And by the way, I know you're a big fan of the Constitution. Where does this fit within that framework?
Yeah, well, of course, it's the First Amendment freedom we're talking about here, Charles, and that's why I'm so glad to see candidates like Katrina out there running who understand the Constitution. This new rule is nothing less than an attempt to smear our First Amendment right that is included in our Bill of Rights for exactly this reason, because our founders did not want a tyrannical government coming in and trying to suppress our free speech. And this isn't the first time they've taken a tack like this, Charles. They've done this to pastors. They tell them, oh, you can't preach politics from the pulpit. Absolutely untrue. And there's a whole group of pastors out there saying, oh, yes, we can. Don't say we can't. And IRS, come and get us. I have a feeling that the knowledgeable, freedom-loving conservative groups being targeted here are not going to be messed with the way the pastors have. I have a feeling they'll come right back at them and be happy to sue them if that's what it takes. But the IRS is not going to get away with this under the watch of freedom lovers.
You know, Katrina, I mean, there's obviously going to be a whole lot of lawsuits, but you think maybe it's a calculated effort on the administration's part to just muffle the Tea Party until the midterm elections are over?
Well, why not? They got away with it the first time. Why not just implement it even harder and go further with it? This Congress cannot seem to put any reins on this administration, from violating rights of the people to violating the Constitution to governing ad hoc. We have a Congress that is just capitulating to the reign of this administration. And Gina is absolutely right. We know the Constitution, we know our rights, and we're going to fight to make sure that we can keep those things.
Katrina, why do you think, you know, John Boehner came out pretty tough against the Tea Party last week. You know, why is it that they've made this calculated move? John Boehner obviously wouldn't be in his position if it weren't for the Tea Party. Why do you think they've made this calculated move to more or less abandon you guys?
Well, I mean, look, we're talking about the establishment on both sides of the aisle who have serious problems, and that's where this fracturing in the Republican Party has come from. Conservative grassroots people want Republicans to govern on principle, not fear. For far too long, Democrats have dictated the strategy of Republicans just because they're afraid to do what's right. And you will see, Charles, even my opponent, Pete Sessions, is backtracking, but just because they didn't read the bill. They didn't know all these taxes were in there. They didn't know they were going to tack on fees to passengers. So they didn't read the bill. They got out there, they attacked their own base. Republicans are going into their own demise.
Gina, that demise, is it avoidable? What can be done? Because you're fighting two parallel fights here, the sort of infighting and the obvious attacks from the White House and the administration to keep everyone quiet.
Yeah, Well, I guess Boehner could sprout a backbone, and some of the GOP establishment, along with the Democrats who actually understand that we do have a Constitution and a Bill of Rights that secures these freedoms for Americans, like this particular rule is trying to dismantle. I suppose if somebody out there would hold Boehner accountable for being what I would say is tantamount to the bane of the existence of the GOP these days, there could be a real hero in this, Charles. But the bottom line is that so seldom do we ever see the establishment GOP actually rising up and seizing these opportunities to get those groups out there who are more independent and who are more freedom-minded and might not want to label themselves GOP. This is a great opportunity for recruitment to say, hey, that's what they believe. This is tyranny. This is what we believe. This is freedom and constitutional liberty. And they could go so far on that, Charles, but they probably won't do it because most of them are cowards, frankly.
All right, that's very strong language, but that's why we have you on the show. Gina, Katrina, thanks a lot, ladies. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Charles.
Well,